The night I was supposed to celebrate becoming regional director. My wife Amelia had the audacity to bring her lover Jack right to my promotion dinner and flaunt their relationship in front of my colleagues and superiors. Not only that, she openly whispered to him during my speech that after tonight she would only be my wife in name. Her heart, her body, her future would belong solely to Jack. My former business partner, who had been consulting with her behind my back for months, she provoked me without the slightest fear because she believed she held all the cards access to my executive contacts, knowledge of my business deals, and leverage over the promotion I'd worked 5 years to earn. But I simply smiled and raised my glass in response. She had no idea that I'd known about their affair for 8 months, that I'd been quietly documenting everything, and that the real celebration was just beginning. Everyone expected me to explode with rage. Instead, they witnessed something far more dangerous, a man who had been planning his perfect revenge all along. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you. Make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. My name is Felix Hughes, and 8 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. I was climbing the corporate ladder at Blackstone Financial. My wife Amelia was the envy of every executive's spouse, and my business partnership with Jack Jones was generating millions in consulting fees. I was 32, successful, and completely blind to the web of deception being spun around me. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning in March. I had returned early from a business trip to Portland, hoping to surprise Amelia with breakfast in bed. Our penthouse apartment in downtown Millbrook Heights was supposed to be empty. Amelia had told me she was visiting her sister in Sacramento for the week, but as I quietly inserted my key into the lock, I heard voices coming from our bedroom. At first, I assumed she had returned early, maybe talking to someone on the phone. But as I moved closer to the bedroom, the voices became clearer, and my blood turned to ice. There was Amelia, my wife of 7 years, wrapped in the arms of Jack Jones, my business partner and someone I considered my closest friend. Felix is such a fool, Amelia was saying, her voice dripping with contempt. He actually thinks I married him for love. The poor man has no idea that everything's a marriage. The support for his career, even the recommendation for his promotion, all been part of our plan. Jack laughed, running his fingers through her hair. You've played the devoted wife perfectly, babe. Once he gets that regional director position, we'll have access to all of Blackstone's major client accounts. The insider information alone will be worth millions when I start my own firm. And the best part, Amelia continued, is that he's so desperately in love with me, he'll never suspect a thing. Even when we start taking clients away from Blackstone, he'll probably blame himself for not being good enough to keep them. I stood frozen in the hallway, my briefcase still in my hand, watching my entire world collapse. The woman I had loved since college, the woman I had worked 60-hour weeks to provide for, the woman who had encouraged me to take risks and chase promotions, she was using me. They were both using me, but what hurt more than the betrayal was the casual cruelty in their voices. I wasn't just being cheated on, I was being laughed at. To them, I was nothing more than a useful fool, a stepping stone to their own success. Jack pulled Amelia closer. How long do you think we'll need to keep this charade going? Just until after his promotion dinner next month, Amelia replied. Once Felix is regional director, I'll have access to all the client files I need. After that, we can figure out our exit strategy. Maybe I'll discover some of his supposed infidelities and take him for half his assets in the divorce. Brilliant. And I'll swoop in as the shoulder to cry on. By the time Felix realizes what happened, we'll be running our own consulting firm with his biggest clients. They kissed again, and I felt something die inside me. But alongside the death of my trust and love, something else was being born. A cold, calculating anger that demanded justice. I quietly backed away from the bedroom, left the apartment, and drove to my office at Blackstone Financial. For the rest of that day, I sat in my corner office on the 42nd floor, staring out at the city skyline and processing what I had learned. The signs had been there all along, I realized. Amelia's sudden interest in my work projects. questions about client confidentiality agreements. The way she always encouraged me to bring Jack into sensitive business discussions. Her insistence that Jack join us for important business dinners where major clients would be present. Even our marriage made sense now. Amelia had pursued me aggressively in college, but I had always assumed it was because she saw something special in me. Now I understood she had identified me as someone with potential, someone who could be molded and manipulated into providing the access and information she needed. That evening, I returned home as if nothing had happened. Amelia was there, looking beautiful as always, with dinner prepared and candles lit on the table. "Welcome home, darling," she said, kissing me on the cheek. "How was Portland?" "Productive," I replied, studying her face for any sign of guilt or deception. There was none. She was a perfect actress. "I'm so proud of you, Felix. You're going to be an amazing regional director. Jack and I were just discussing how we could help you celebrate when the promotion becomes official." "Jack was here?" I asked casually. "Oh yes, he stopped by to drop off some contracts. You know how dedicated he is to the business? We're so lucky to have a partner like him." Lucky. The word almost made me laugh. Over the following weeks, I began to understand the full scope of their deception. Jack had been positioning himself as my indispensable partner, while secretly planning to steal my clients. Amelia had been copying files from my home office, photographing documents when she thought I wasn't looking, and pumping me for information about Blackstone's strategic plans. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had underestimated me. They saw me as their naive victim, too trusting and too in love to see what was happening. They had no idea that Felix Hughes, the man they thought they could manipulate and discard, was about to become their worst nightmare. I began documenting everything. I installed hidden cameras in my home office, started recording my conversations. With Jack, I hired a private investigator to follow Amelia when she claimed to be visiting friends or family. And slowly, methodically, I began building a case against them both. The promotion dinner was still 3 weeks away when I discovered the final piece of their puzzle. Hidden in Amelia's email account, I found correspondence with a headhunter about a position at Morrison & Associates, Blackstone's biggest competitor. She was planning to leave me and take a job where she could use the stolen client information most effectively. That night, as I lay in bed next to my sleeping wife, I made my decision. They wanted to play games. It's fine. But they were about to learn that Felix Hughes played to win. The promotion dinner would indeed be a celebration, just not the kind they were expecting. To understand how completely I had been played, I need to take you back to the beginning. My story with Amelia started at Stanford Business School, where I was the scholarship kid from a working-class family in Ohio, and she was the polished daughter of a corporate lawyer from Beverly Hills. I was studying 16 hours a day, working part-time at the campus bookstore, and eating ramen noodles for dinner. She was everything I thought I could never have: beautiful, sophisticated, and inexplicably interested in me. "You're going to change the world, Felix," she used to tell me as we studied together in the library. "You have something special that most people don't see yet, but I see it. You're going to be incredibly successful." I was completely smitten. Here was this amazing woman who believed in me when I barely believed in myself. My parents had worked factory jobs their entire lives, and I was the first person in my family to attend college, let alone graduate school. Blackstone Financial, instead of the smaller firm that had offered me slightly more money, think about the long-term potential. She would say, "Blackstone has the prestige and connections that will serve you for decades." She was right, of course. But now, I understood why she had pushed so hard for that particular choice. After graduation, when Blackstone offered me a full-time position, Amelia suggested I should network aggressively and consider bringing in a business partner who could help me develop clients. That's when she introduced me to Jack Jones, her friend from undergrad who had started his own consulting practice. "Jack is brilliant with people," Amelia had said. "He has this natural ability to make clients trust him completely. If you two partnered up, you could build something incredible together." Looking back, I realize now that every major decision in my career had been guided by Amelia's suggestions. She had orchestrated my path from the very beginning, positioning me exactly where she and Jack needed me to be. The partnership with Jack had been her idea. The decision to focus on high-net-worth clients had been her suggestion. Even the apartment we lived in, a penthouse in Millbrook Heights, the home office perfect for bringing work home, had been Amelia's choice. She had argued that we needed to live the lifestyle that would impress potential clients. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Back to the story. 4. 7 years, I had thought I was building a life with the woman I loved. In reality, I had been carefully cultivated as a resource to be harvested. The week after I discovered their affair, I began investigating deeper. What I found was worse than I had imagined. Jack hadn't just been sleeping with my wife, he had been systematically positioning himself to destroy my career. The consulting fees I had been paying him were being funneled into a secret account that he and Amelia controlled jointly. They had been building their war chest with my own money. I discovered that Jack had been subtly undermining me in client meetings, planting seeds of doubt about my capabilities while positioning himself as the more reliable partner. Several clients had already been having private conversations with him about potentially switching to his services once he went independent. But the most devastating discovery came when I hacked into Amelia's personal email account. I found 3 years' worth of correspondence between her and Jack, dating back to long before their physical affair began. They had been planning this from the very beginning of our partnership. "Felix is perfect for this," one early email read. "He's ambitious enough to get promoted quickly, but insecure enough to never question why we're so interested in helping him. Plus, he's completely in love with me, which makes him easy to manipulate." Jack had replied, "I agree. And the best part is that he genuinely thinks we're his friends. He'll never see us coming." I had to read that email 3 times before it fully sank in. They'd been laughing at me for years. Every piece of advice, every encouragement, every expression of love, it had all been calculated manipulation. Emails revealed the full scope of their plan. They intended to wait until I was promoted to regional director, then spend 6 months copying every client file, contract, and strategic document they could access. Once they had everything they needed, Amelia would file for divorce, claiming I had become obsessed with work and was emotionally unavailable. Jack would then poach my biggest clients, offering them better terms while I was distracted by the divorce proceedings. They had even discussed how to frame me for potential ethical violations, making it impossible for me to compete with their new firm. "If we play this right," Jack had written, "Felix will be so destroyed personally and professionally that he'll never be able to recover. We'll have the clients, the connections, and the reputation, while he'll be left with nothing." Reading those words, I felt something break inside me. But it wasn't just heartbreak. It was the final destruction of the naive, trusting person I had been. In that moment, Felix Hughes, the optimistic dreamer, died, and someone much more dangerous was born. I spent the next several weeks in a strange state of clarity. During the day, I continued playing my role perfectly. I came home to Amelia with flowers and stories about my day. I had lunch meetings with Jack, where we discussed strategies for growing our client base. I smiled and laughed and acted like the devoted husband and trusting partner they expected me to be. But at night, I was documenting everything. I installed keyloggers on both of their computers. I hired forensic accountants to trace their financial transactions. I had a private investigator follow them to document their meetings and rendezvous. Most importantly, I began working with Blackstone's legal department to understand exactly what constitutes corporate espionage and client theft. The hardest part wasn't the investigation, it was the acting. Every time Amelia kissed me goodbye in the morning, I had to resist the urge to confront her. Every time Jack called me partner or buddy, I had to bite my tongue. They had no idea that the man they thought they were deceiving was actually 3 steps ahead of them. 2 weeks. Before the promotion dinner, I made my final decision. I wasn't going to just expose them, I was going to destroy them so completely that they would never be able to hurt anyone else the way they had hurt me. The promotion dinner would be perfect. They were expecting their victory celebration, the moment when all their planning would finally pay off. Instead, it would be the night when Felix Hughes showed the world exactly what happened to people who mistook his kindness for weakness. I had been their victim for 7 years, But that was about to change forever. The promotion dinner was held at the Grandview Ballroom in downtown Millbrook Heights, one of the city's most prestigious venues. Blackstone Financial had spared no expense. Crystal chandeliers, live jazz, quartet, and a guest list that included every major player in the regional financial sector. This was meant to be my moment of triumph, the culmination of 5 years of grinding work to reach the regional director position. I arrived early, impeccably, dressed in my best charcoal suit, and spent the first hour networking with colleagues and clients. To everyone watching, I was the picture of a successful executive celebrating his well-deserved promotion. What they couldn't see was the cold calculation behind my smile, the careful way I was positioning myself for what was about to unfold. Amelia arrived fashionably late, wearing a stunning red dress that I had bought for her birthday last year. She looked absolutely radiant, playing the role of the supportive wife to perfection. She kissed me on the cheek and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, darling. You deserve this more than anyone." The irony was almost too much to bear. 20 minutes later, Jack made his entrance. He greeted me with his usual firm handshake and that practiced smile that had fooled me for so many years. "Congratulations, partner," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "This is just the beginning for us." He was right about one thing: this was definitely just the beginning. As the evening progressed, I watched them operate with newfound clarity. Amelia worked the room like a professional, charming my colleagues' wives and making mental notes about their husbands' positions and influence. Jack positioned himself strategically near the bar, where he could overhear conversations and insert himself into discussions about business opportunities. They were hunting in plain sight, and everyone was too polite to notice. The moment that changed everything came during my acceptance speech. I was standing at the podium, looking out at the sea of faces: colleagues, clients, competitors, and friends who had supported my career. The room was completely silent, waiting for my words. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, 5 years ago, I joined Blackstone Financial as an associate with big dreams and even bigger ambitions. Tonight I stand before you as your new regional director, and I couldn't be more grateful for the trust you've placed in me. Polite applause rippled through the room. I continued, "But success in this business isn't just about individual achievement. It's about the people who support you, who believe in your vision, and who stand by you even when times get tough." Paused, letting my gaze sweep across the room until it landed on Amelia and Jack, who were standing together near the back. They were whispering to each other, and I could see Amelia's lips moving as she spoke directly into Jack's ear. Sometimes, I continued, my voice carrying clearly through the room's sound system. "The people closest to us show us exactly who they really are, and when that happens, we have a choice. We can let their betrayal destroy us, or we can use it to become stronger, smarter, and more determined than ever before." A murmur went through the crowd. This wasn't the typical corporate success speech they had been expecting. That's when I saw it. The moment Amelia realized something was wrong, her face went pale, and she grabbed Jack's arm. They'd been so focused on celebrating their anticipated victory that they hadn't noticed the shift in my tone, the way I was looking directly at them. "You see," I continued, "I've learned that true success isn't just about climbing the corporate ladder. It's about knowing who you can trust, who you can count on, and who has your back when the stakes are highest." I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out a small remote control. With a single click, the large screens around the ballroom, originally meant to display photos from my career at Blackstone, lit up with something. It's entirely different. The first image was a bank statement showing the joint account that Jack and Amelia had been secretly funding with my consulting fees. The second was a screenshot of their email correspondence, the subject line clearly visible: "Felix Timeline Phase 3 Implementation." The room went completely silent. I could have heard a pin drop. "I want to thank everyone here tonight," I said, my voice steady and calm. "It's for helping me understand the difference between real partnership and calculated manipulation. The difference between love and exploitation. The difference between friends and predators." Jack tried to push through the crowd toward the exit, but I had anticipated this. Earlier that evening, I had quietly spoken with Richard Blackstone himself, Blackstone Financial's founder and CEO, who was seated at the head table. What I had shared with him during our private conversation had left him both shocked and impressed. Mr. Jones. Richard's voice boomed across the room as he stood up. I believe you'll want to stay for the rest of Felix's presentation. As will you, Mrs. Hughes. The use of formal names was deliberate and chilling. Richard Blackstone didn't use formal names, unless he was about to destroy someone's career. More images flashed on the screen's photographs of Jack and Amelia together, financial records showing their theft, and most damning of all, the emails, where they discussed framing me for ethical violations and destroying my reputation. For the past 8 months, I continued. I've been conducting a thorough investigation into corporate espionage and client theft. What I discovered was a conspiracy that goes to the very heart of professional trust and personal loyalty. The crowd was transfixed. Some people were taking photos with their phones. Others were whispering urgently to their companions. The financial world of Millbrook Heights was a small community. Word of this would spread like wildfire. Amelia tried to speak, but her voice came out as a croak. Felix, this isn't what it looks like, actually, I interrupted. It's exactly what it looks like, and it's exactly what it is. I clicked the remote again, and the screens displayed a single document to formal complaint filed with the State Attorney General's office. With today's date and my signature clearly visible, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to know that justice isn't just about personal satisfaction. It's about protecting the integrity of our industry and ensuring that trust remains the foundation of everything we do. Richard Blackstone stepped forward, his face grave. Felix, on behalf of Blackstone Financial, I want to publicly commend you for your courage in exposing this conspiracy. I want to announce that we will be cooperating fully with law enforcement. In their investigation, the room erupted in whispers and shocked conversations. I could see people pointing at Jack and Amelia, who were now standing frozen like deer in headlights. But I wasn't finished yet. There's one more thing, I said, raising my voice to quiet the crowd. I've learned that real strength isn't about revenge. It's about justice. It's about making sure that what happened to me doesn't happen to anyone else. I looked directly at Jack and Amelia, who were both staring at me with expressions of pure terror. The investigation is complete. The evidence has been submitted, and now the consequences begin. As I stepped away from the podium, the room burst into applause, not the polite corporate applause from earlier, but genuine appreciation for someone who had turned a personal betrayal into a public service. Jack and Amelia tried to leave. They found their path blocked by 2 gentlemen in dark suits who flashed badges and introduced themselves as investigators from the State Attorney General's office. The evening was far from over, but the power had shifted completely. I was no longer their victim. I was their judge, jury, and executioner. The 2 investigators who approached Jack and Amelia were Agent Sarah Chen from the State Attorney General's Economic Crimes Unit and Detective Michael Torres from the Millbrook Heights Financial Crimes Division. I've been working with them for the past 6 weeks, providing evidence and coordinating tonight's operation. Mr. Jones, Mrs. Hughes, Agent Chen said professionally, flashing her badge. We need to speak with you regarding an ongoing investigation into corporate espionage, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft of trade secrets. The ballroom had gone completely silent. 200 of the most influential people in the regional financial sector were watching as my wife and business partner were being confronted by law enforcement at what was supposed to be my celebration dinner. Jack tried to maintain his composure, but I could see sweat beading on his forehead. I think there's been some misunderstanding. We should discuss this privately, actually, Detective Torres interrupted. Mr. Hughes has provided us with quite comprehensive evidence. We have warrants for both of your electronic devices and permission to search your offices and residences. When Richard Blackstone stepped forward again, commanding the room's attention, ladies and gentlemen, what you're witnessing tonight is the culmination of one of the most sophisticated corporate espionage cases we've encountered in this region. Felix has not only protected Blackstone Financial, but potentially saved dozens of other firms from similar exploitation. He gestured to the screens, which now displayed a new set of documents. What we initially thought was a simple case of adultery and business partnership fraud has revealed something much more extensive. Mr. Jones and Mrs. Hughes have been operating what appears to be a systematic scheme targeting multiple financial professionals across the state. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. This was bigger than anyone had imagined. Agent Chen took control of the presentation. Clicking through evidence that I had helped compile over the past months, our investigation has revealed that this pattern extends back at least 5 years and involves at least 12 other victims in similar positions. The first new image showed a chart connecting Jack and Amelia to a network of other financial professionals, all rising stars in their respective firms, all targeted in similar ways. Names I recognized from industry conferences and networking events. The methodology was always the same, Agent Chen continued. Mrs. Hughes would identify promising financial professionals who were positioned for advancement. She would then initiate romantic relationships or close friendships, designed to provide access to insider information. Mr. Jones would simultaneously approach these individuals as a potential business partner or consultant. More evidence flashed. On the screen's bank records, showing a complex web of offshore accounts. Communication logs revealing coordination between multiple conspirators, and most damning of all, a detailed spreadsheet tracking their various projects with projected financial gains. I felt sick seeing it laid out so systematically. Under the column labeled Felix Hughes, it estimated a total yield of $2.3 million over 3 years, with notes about my emotional vulnerability and professional ambition that made me a prime target. But I wasn't the only name on that list. There was David Morrison from Pinnacle Investments, marked as completed, $890,000 extracted. Jennifer Walsh from Strategic Capital, listed as in progress, estimated $1.2 million potential. Thomas Chin from Harbor Financial, noted as initial approach successful. My God, someone in the crowd whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. They've been doing this to people all over the state. Jack finally broke. This is insane. You can't prove any of this. Felix is just angry about his marriage falling apart, and he's trying to destroy us out of spite. That's when I stepped forward and spoke for the first time since leaving the podium. Actually, Jack, they can prove all of it, 'cause I've been recording our conversations for the past 8 months. I nodded to Agent Chen, who clicked to the next slide. Audio equipment appeared on the screen, tiny recording devices that I had worn to every meeting with Jack. Every dinner with Amelia, every conversation where they thought they were safe to reveal their true intentions. Mr. Hughes has provided us with over 40 hours of recorded conversations, Detective Torres announced. Conversations where both defendants explicitly discussed their methodology, or other victims, and their plans for expanding the operation. Agent Chen played a brief audio clip that filled the ballroom through the sound system. It was Jack's voice, clear and unmistakable. The beauty of this system is that these guys never see it coming. They're so focused on their careers and so desperate for love or partnership that they'll hand over everything. Amelia could probably get Felix to give her the keys to the vault if she asked nicely. Amelia's voice responded, "It's almost too easy. These ambitious men are so predictable. Promise them love, support their dreams, make them feel special, and they'll give you access to anything. The emotional manipulation is actually the simplest part." The recording continued. "Once we drain Felix dry and destroy his reputation, we move to the next city. Thomas Chen in Harbor looks perfect, young, ambitious, just got promoted, and according to his social media, he's desperate to find a serious relationship." The ballroom was dead silent except for the sound of people's shocked breathing. Several attendees were recording with their phones, and I knew this would be all over social media within the hour. "How many others?" Richard Blackstone asked, his voice grim. "Our current investigation has identified 17 potential victims across 4 states, Agent Chen replied. "Mr. Hughes's cooperation has been instrumental in helping us understand the full scope of this operation." I looked at Amelia, who was staring at me with an expression of pure hatred. The mask had finally slipped completely. The loving wife, the supportive partner, the woman who had believed in my dreams, she was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. "You destroyed everything," she hissed at me. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "I know exactly what I've done," I replied calmly. "I've stopped you from destroying anyone else the way you destroyed me." Detective Torres stepped forward. With handcuffs, Mrs. Hughes, Mr. Jones, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit wire fraud, identity theft, corporate espionage, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent, to remain silent. As they read them their rights, Richard Blackstone approached me. Felix, I want you to know that Blackstone Financial will be covering all your legal expenses and providing whatever support you need during this process. What you've done tonight took incredible courage. Thank you, Richard, but I didn't do this for courage. I did it because it was right. He nodded approvingly. That's exactly why you're the right person for the regional director position, and why I'm recommending you for our new corporate security director role as well. As Jack and Amelia were led away in handcuffs, the crowd began to disperse, but not before dozens of people approached me to offer their support and congratulations. Many shared their own stories of narrow escapes from similar scams, and several mentioned colleagues who might have been victims. The last thing I heard as the ballroom doors closed was Agent Chen speaking to a reporter who had somehow gotten inside. This case represents one of the most sophisticated long-term fraud operations we've encountered. Without Mr. Hughes's cooperation and courage, these perpetrators could have continued victimizing professionals for years to come. As I stood alone in the now empty ballroom, I realized that my real promotion had nothing to do with the regional director title. Tonight, I had been promoted from victim to survivor, from target to protector, from someone who trusted blindly, to someone who would ensure that trust was never weaponized again. The truth had been exposed, justice had been served, and Felix Hughes, the real Felix Hughes, was finally free. 3 months after the promotion dinner that changed everything, I was sitting in my new corner office on the 45th floor of Blackstone Financial's headquarters, looking out at the city skyline and marveling at how completely my life had transformed. The legal proceedings had moved swiftly. Jack and Amelia were both facing federal charges after the investigation revealed their operation crossed state lines. Jack had been denied bail after investigators discovered he had been planning to flee to the Cayman Islands, where he had hidden assets under false names. Amelia had initially tried to claim she was a victim of Jack's manipulation, but the recorded conversations I had provided made it clear she had been an equal partner in the scheme. The ripple effects of their arrest had been extraordinary. Within weeks of the story breaking, 12 other victims had come forward from across the region. The case had made national news, with financial publications calling it the most sophisticated long-term fraud operation in the industry's recent history. But the personal transformation had been even more profound than the legal victory. Richard Blackstone had been true to his word, not only keeping me as regional director, but also appointing me as the company's first director of corporate security. My salary had tripled. I was now responsible for developing protocols to protect other financial firms from similar schemes. Felix, came a voice from my office doorway. I looked up to see Catalina Berry, the brilliant forensic accountant, who had helped me trace Jack and Amelia's financial crimes. Over the past months, our professional relationship had evolved into something deeper, connection based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine compatibility. The Justice Department called, she said, stepping into my office with a warm smile. They want to know if you'd be interested in consulting on a similar case in Chicago. Apparently, your methodology for uncovering long-term fraud has become their new gold standard. I stood up and walked over to her, still amazed by how different it felt to be with someone who valued honesty and integrity above all else. What do you think? I think, she said, adjusting my tie with a playful grin, that Felix Hughes has become the most sought-after expert on corporate espionage in the country, and I think you should be proud of what you've accomplished. She was right. In the months since the arrest, I had been contacted by law enforcement agencies, corporate security firms, and financial institutions across the country. Harvard Business School had invited me to speak about corporate fraud prevention. The Wall Street Journal had featured me in a cover story about protecting professional relationships from exploitation. But the most satisfying transformation had been personal. The man who had once been naive enough to trust blindly had become someone who could spot manipulation from a mile away. The husband who had been taken advantage of for years had become a protector of others in similar situations. There's something else, Catalina said, pulling an envelope from her briefcase. The state attorney general's office called. They're recommending you for a civilian service award for your role in breaking up the fraud ring. I looked at the official letter, but my mind was elsewhere. 6 months ago, I had been a fool in love with a woman who was using me. Today, I was respected across the industry, financially secure, and in a relationship with someone who challenged me to be better every day. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Divorce finalized. Prenup held up completely. Amelia gets nothing. House and all assets remain yours. Congratulations on your freedom. I showed the message to Catalina, who smiled and kissed my cheek. What does it feel to be completely free? It feels like I can finally breathe, I replied. For the first time in years, I know that the people in my life are here because they want to be, not because they want something from me. The irony wasn't lost on me. Jack and Amelia had thought they were setting me up for destruction, but they had actually set me up for the greatest success of my life. Their betrayal had forced me to become stronger, smarter, and more discerning than I ever would have been otherwise. That evening, Catalina and I had dinner at the same restaurant where Amelia and I had celebrated our 5th wedding anniversary. But this time, the conversation was genuine, the laughter was real, and the connection was built on truth rather than deception. You know what I realized today? I said, taking her hand across the table. What's that? Spent 7 years trying to be good enough for someone who was never worthy of me. Now I'm with someone who makes me want to be better, not because I'm not enough, but because growing together is what real partnerships are about. Catalina squeezed my hand. Felix Hughes, you're going to make me cry? Good tears, I hope? The best kind. As we walked home through the streets of Millbrook Heights, I reflected on how completely my life had changed. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed at a promotion dinner. I was the man who had turned that betrayal into justice, that pain into purpose, and that ending into a new beginning. The transformation was complete. Felix Hughes had risen from the ashes of his old life. He was stronger than ever before. 1 year after the promotion dinner that changed everything, I stood before another audience, but this time the context was entirely different. The Harvard Business School auditorium was packed with MBA students, corporate executives, and law enforcement officials who had come to hear my keynote presentation on corporate fraud prevention and personal resilience. As I looked out at the sea of faces, I thought about how far I had traveled from that broken man who had discovered his wife's betrayal in a Portland hotel room. The journey had been painful, but it had led me to a life I never could have imagined. Ladies and gentlemen, I began. A year ago, I thought I knew what success looked like. I thought it was about climbing the corporate ladder, earning respect, and building a life with someone I loved. I was wrong on almost every count, but being wrong turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. Over the past year, my story had become legendary in business circles, not just as a cautionary tale, but as a blueprint for how to turn betrayal into triumph. Let me tell you about the final chapter of Jack Jones and Amelia Clark's story, I continued. Because understanding their fate is crucial to understanding why justice ultimately prevails. I clicked to the first slide, which showed newspaper headlines from the past year: corporate fraud ring dismantled, 17 victims recover $8, 3 million federal racketeering charges result in maximum sentences. Jack Jones was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for racketeering, wire fraud, and conspiracy. During his trial, investigators discovered that his scheme extended even further than we originally thought to 23 victims across 6 states, with total damages exceeding $12 million. The audience murmured in shock. Even those who had followed the case closely didn't know the full scope of what had been uncovered. Amelia Clark received 8 years for her role in the conspiracy. Her attempt to claim she was a victim of Jack's manipulation failed when prosecutors played the 40-plus hours of recordings. I had provided recordings where her voice was clearly heard, planning strategies to exploit and destroy the men she was supposed to love. I paused, letting that sink in. But here's what's most important. They didn't just lose their freedom. They lost everything they had worked for. Every dollar they had stolen was recovered and returned to victims. Every reputation they had built was permanently destroyed. Every connection they had cultivated was severed. The next slide showed a photo of myself and Catalina at our engagement party the previous month. The audience broke into spontaneous applause. Meanwhile, my life took a completely different trajectory. I didn't just recover from their betrayal, I thrived because of it. Catalina Berry, the forensic accountant who helped me build the case against them, became my partner in every sense of the word. We're getting married next month, and I can tell you with absolute certainty that this is what real love looks like. I looked down at the engagement ring on my finger, a simple platinum band that represented everything Amelia's expensive jewelry had not: authenticity, commitment, and genuine partnership. Professionally, the experience transformed me from a regional director at one company to the founder of Corporate Security Solutions, the fastest-growing fraud prevention firm in the country. We now protect over 300 companies across North America, and we've prevented an estimated $50 million in corporate espionage losses. The next slide showed our company's growth chart from 0 to 47 employees in just 8 months. With clients ranging from Fortune 500 companies to small family businesses, But the most satisfying part of my new career isn't the money or the recognition. It's the letters I receive from people who avoided becoming victims because they learned to recognize the warning signs. It's the calls from law enforcement agencies who use our methods to break up similar schemes. It's knowing that Jack and Amelia's betrayal didn't just destroy their lives, it created a shield that protects countless others. I clicked to a slide showing testimonials from clients and law enforcement partners. One letter from a young executive in Denver read, "Your presentation saved my career and possibly my life." I'll recognize the exact pattern you described in. Someone who was trying to get close to me.
Thank you for turning your pain into protection.
For others. This brings me to the most important lesson I learned, I continued. Betrayal isn't just about what someone does to you, it's about what you choose to do with the experience. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it build you into someone stronger, wiser, and more capable of protecting others. Was completely engaged now. I could see people taking notes, nodding in recognition, and some wiping away tears as they connected with the universal themes in my story. Here's what I wish I could tell my younger self, and what I want to tell. All of you, trust your instincts. When someone seems too good to be true, they probably are. When someone pushes you to make decisions that benefit them more than you, ask questions. When someone tries to isolate you from friends and family who might offer different perspectives, that's a red flag the size of Texas. I moved to the next slide, which showed a comparison between healthy relationships and manipulative ones. Real love doesn't ask you to compromise your values or ignore your concerns. Real partnerships don't require you to give up your agency or your critical thinking. Real support doesn't come with hidden agendas or secret timelines. The final slide showed a photo of the corporate security team I had built, including Catalina. Alongside law enforcement partners from around the country, today I'm not just Felix Hughes, the man who was betrayed. I'm Felix Hughes, the man who turned betrayal into a calling, who transformed personal pain into professional purpose, and who learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can become the best thing that ever happened to you. I paused, looking out at the audience one final time. If you take one thing away from my story, let it be this. You are not defined by what people do to you. You are defined by how you respond to what people do to you. Jack and Amelia thought they were writing my story. They thought they were in control of my future. But they were wrong. I took back control, and I wrote my own ending. The applause was thunderous and sustained. As I left the stage, I was approached by dozens of people who shared their own stories of betrayal and recovery, who asked for advice on protecting their organizations, and who thanked me for showing them that survival was possible. Later that evening, Catalina and I sat on the balcony of our new home, a beautiful house in the hills, overlooking Millbrook Heights that we had purchased together. We were planning our wedding, discussing our growing business, and dreaming about the future we were building together. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked, curled up beside me as we watched the sunset. "The pain you had to go through to get here?" I considered the question seriously. You know what's strange? I don't regret it at all. If Jack and Amelia hadn't betrayed me, I never would have developed the skills to protect others. I never would have built this business, never would have become the person I needed to be to deserve someone like you. So you're grateful for the betrayal? I'm grateful for the strength it forced me to find. Grateful for the clarity it gave me about what real love looks like. I'm grateful for the opportunity it created to turn my pain into purpose. As we sat there in comfortable silence, I realized that the man who had been humiliated at a promotion dinner a year ago was gone. Forever. In his place was someone who had learned that true success isn't about avoiding betrayal. It's about using betrayal to become unbeatable. Jack and Amelia had thought they were destroying Felix Hughes. Instead, they had created him. And that, I realized, was the most perfect justice of all. The story that began with betrayal had ended with triumph. The victim had become the victor. Mark had become the master. And Felix Hughes had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the people who hurt you the most end up giving you exactly what you need to become who you were always meant to be. That night, as I held Catalina close and looked out at the city lights below, I smiled, knowing that the best chapters of my story were still to come. Because when you survive betrayal and emerge stronger, you don't just get your life back. You get a life that's better than anything you originally lost. And that, more than any revenge, is the sweetest victory of all. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.